First of all, I'd like to thank you all for letting me be part of this and thank Paula for including me in this. And I want you to consider the things I'm going to share with you today to be both educational and an advocacy, because this is wheelhouse for me and has been for a while, and it's important that industry starts to pay attention. Now, you look at safety lifecycle management and you go, oh God, we're going to document and we're going to worry about documentation. Isn't that a little boring? It's all been in the past about compliance with the standards and their prescription about how to save and store data, and also about the rigor of doing proof tests. And as you can see from our research, everybody has their formal requirements for a safety audit, and everybody adheres to their safety requirements, specs, and starts out with the best of intentions and the best, what I call religion, as far as doing these things and continuing to execute these proof tests. Everyone isn't very good about documenting their proof tests in an electronicized format. Let me explain a little bit. This can be profitable if you know what you're doing, but you literally have to go beyond just adherence and compliance. You have to do something with your data. Testing is done. The results often get stored, what I call the mythical land of somewhere. They may be in a functional safety engineer's drawer. They may be sitting somewhere in the instrumentation and control tech's shop. Often that data goes no farther than whoever executed the proof test. That's both a tragedy and it's a safety risk. If your learnings and your observations aren't logged, how do you really know where you are? Or if you've logged them, but you've logged them incorrectly, or you haven't compared them to the proof test rigor that senior safety guys may have developed for you over 20 years, you may have a problem. You have a big problem because you've done this testing, but you've not given anybody reason to act upon it necessarily unless you immediately flag it and it immediately happens. So one of the reasons why safety lifecycle management should lead you towards process safety management is you need to do something with the data. But lack of reproducible formal data integrations between various safety suppliers, analysis software, various enterprise level software applications, and historians and enterprise level systems creates a barrier and an impediment to you. You've got data no one's doing anything with. Now, suppliers, don't be offended. I'm not calling you out for not doing due diligence or owner operators. What I'm saying is you all start out great, and there are people who will help you define your safety integrity levels. There are people who will work with you to facilitate a HAZOP. There are people who will work with you to give you the golden setup going in. Many vendors are available and will even provide rudimentary methods of tracking a proof test. But again, you've got to do due diligence beyond the norm because this happens. It's about production. Everybody speaks about being safe. Everybody says they're part of a safety culture. And when oil was up at $100 a barrel, I counted about 100 deferrals amongst the various and big oil production because they were making money hand over fist. And it was easier to defer proof tests that might cause them production outages and may even risk the safety of their instrumentation and control engineers. So it was easier to defer them than it was to continue on them. Now, yes, you see, they say we base on a prescriptive interval. And yes, we do this as part of SIL verification. Anybody ever hear the phrase, if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen? Back when I had hair, when I was a much, much younger man, and I carried tools, I had that beaten into my head because I worked for an automotive manufacturer who said, you don't give verbal orders. You write down your orders, you write down the actions, you write down what happens. Well, if you can't all store your test data in your maintenance management system and your plant has got all of your proof test results filled in on a spreadsheet and they're in a filing cabinet somewhere, how can you ever hope to make your assets' performance improve because you're running more safely, because you're instituting a safety culture? Memories fade. Mr. Carroll from Georgia Pacific said something very scary but very true 2 days ago. He said, my expertise has white hair and it's leaving. Now, I can look around this room and I can see several very talented, capable leaders in industry who have taught me functional safety. And I'm not a spring chicken anymore, folks. You can obviously tell it's a little shiny up here on the head and things. I've been at this for a while. There's a gap behind the baby boomers. We've all talked for years about the aging workforce. In the same way memories fade, skill fades. People are walking out the door. How come nobody's alarmed? How come they're not alarmed at the lack of expertise in some of the younger people? How come they're not alarmed that perhaps what they commissioned and started up is no longer the state they're currently in? It's easy to ignore steady state, steady flow behaviors, okay? If the plant's running well and there's not a problem, complacency can set in. Is anyone monitoring a real-time risk profile for their facility? This would be a key piece to have as part of both asset performance management and process safety management. We went through all that rigor. We yelled at each other, we argued in the HAZOP, we came up with what our hazardous events were and a strategy on how to mitigate them. We started it up, we all went, hooray! And then everybody walked away and nobody worried about, were we going to be religious about following through with what we committed to? Well, folks, if you've read the standards, and I didn't make any of them up, I may have contributed to a number of them, we're supposed to be responsible for safety systems from cradle to grave. I don't care if it's a PLC that got programmed in the late 80s as a bespoke safety solution. It's got to have the same rigor as a Yokogawa box, an Emerson box, a Triconics box, a HEMA box, an ABB box, a whoever's box. So if you're not doing some things to ensure that level of rigor, you have a challenge. Now, I've already spoken to the risk profile of the facility. Here's a real logical part. Facilities age. I've not seen a young refinery. I've not been in a young chemical plant. I've not been in an installation other than brand new green fields that I would call young. So we do our LOPA. Everything is great. Has anybody really logged or kept track, other than on paper maybe, that the alarm that they took credit for as a layer of protection got shelved? And that difficult control loop that's supposed to be the DCS's action to mitigate a potential hazardous event got put in manual. So if these are your layers of protection, are you really as safe as you thought you were? And now, God forbid, you're going to ask an instrumentation and control engineer like my father to go out there and do something. And he's thinking, I follow my 12-page proof test procedure. Yeah, it's in somebody's drawer, but I've known the maintenance foreman for years. Everything's cool. Everything's not cool when he gets out there and he finds out that he is totally unprotected. If he's smart, he's going to go check first. But now we're counting on just culture, not technology to help us, not information to help us, and not sharing that data with the maintenance management systems and with the enterprise level systems, much less our control system. So, if you can institute effective, comprehensive safety lifecycle management, you can improve the repeatability of your processes. Got a ghost here because I'm heavy-footed. A lot of what I've discovered over the years, and believe me, I've screwed up proof tests myself, and I've welded leads onto motors, and I've been bit with high voltage. It's repeatability in how you behave to perform these maintenance actions and to perform these tests that helps greater reliability also. Now, there are some companies, and some are working on aspects of life cycle management and process safety management, but they offer parts and they offer pieces. Now, many of us have looked at safety life cycle as only a set of rules. Okay, well, it's a set of rules, but it's a lot more. And I believe we're missing opportunities to do a lot more. Time element of response is crucial. At one point in my life, I had 100 skilled tradesmen that worked for me. Half of them were sparkies, half of them were millwrights and pipe fitters. They'd get whatever work procedure or work process they had, they'd fold it up, stick it in their back pocket, or stuff it inside their Nomex suit or their coveralls, go out and do the work. Maybe the next day, they'd fill in the form and turn it in at the maintenance shop. How many hours have gone by if that guy found something and he forgot to tell the next shift? How many hours have gone by from discovering there might have been a problem to telling someone, to sharing that information? If you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. Now, if you've got a system that is paying attention, it may start out procedural because not every supplier has got a mature offering to do safety lifecycle management or process safety management. But you should be able to go back and keep your LOPA evergreen. I'll challenge everybody in the business who's trying to do process safety management right now. Are you really doing that? I don't think so. But if you can't do it electronically at first, document your deviations, document your corrective actions, and put a date on them. I had a boss a while ago, when he wasn't throwing his radio at me, always used to say, by when? When is very important to safety because when, 5 or 10 seconds of when, let's think back to Texas City or a few other places, might have saved some lives if people had shared data, if systems had been aware of data. So integrate your test results with your maintenance management system and with your plant historian. Now that sounds pretty easy, right? Everybody ought to be able to do that. How many people in the room are engineers? How many are double E's, control engineers? There's a fair amount of us who've got the backgrounds to make sure these things occur. So why don't we? If we can prove that we can operate safer, I'm sure Lloyd's or whoever else is doing the private insuring for most of the large owner-operator manufacturers would have a lower liability premium. There are tangible numbers that can be demonstrated that show if you have a safety lifecycle management program and it's the foundation for a process safety management program, you may be able to sweat your assets a bit harder, but in a safe fashion, Paula, because you know where the real ragged limits are, and you know that at this point in time, I am this safe, rather than, well, my LOPA says I'm over here. You actually need a picture of where you are in order to determine where you're going, but you've got to be looking forward rather than back. You can't rely on how we used to do things 10 and 20 years ago. But if you do look forward and you communicate, and I tend to over-communicate to people, so if I bore you to tears, you'll hear me shout in a few minutes because a few of you will pop your heads back up. Rigor and communication are important. And I'm building the case for, yeah, there's profit there. Why aren't we using a full solution? Well, I'll tell you. Nobody really is connecting the dots. SIFs are known, SIL requirements are known. Work orders can be scheduled. Work orders tend to focus around physical pieces of equipment or functional locations. They don't focus necessarily around SIF number 3 on batch reactor on the west wall of the building, or they don't focus on specific SIFs. They may, but it may be 5 layers deep in a work order. Somebody gets a proof test or not, and they provide some information, but a lot of these integrations are not in place, or they're standard and not repeatable. Now, I know there are a lot of IT companies who like to sell engineering services. Oh yeah, we'll make it work. And what you end up with is an inability to reproduce a solution. So there you've created another barrier to doing safety lifecycle management or asset performance management or process safety management because you got a white elephant. Now, if you're BASF, as an example, and you have 200 or 300 operating units, why wouldn't you document it and set up a mechanism, or like a DAO, document it, set up a mechanism, and make it repeatable. Well, and nobody has to answer out loud, but how many of you have worn more than one hat the last few years, assumed responsibilities of others as they retired, or suddenly found yourself being the drummer in a two-person band? A lot of us are doing more than one job. It's not just us, it's our people. So they want to do better. We've not made it easy. Nobody's got the time, and nobody's taken the effort to champion sharing information with the other domains. Yeah, from the survey you can see, we're really sucking air here. Yes, only 18% of us do for all of our protective layers and our SIFs. 19% do to the same degree regarding SIL. That's pathetic. I'm sorry. So data matters. We know we have a gap, and we have a lack of long-term instrumentation. We know that many DCS suppliers think that their asset management solution is going to help. How many of them have an asset management solution that has even a category or a menu tree for safety devices? Come on, lack of data integration in the safety context hurts us because everybody treats safety like it's a logic bolt-on rather than a continuous loop. We run these plants 24/7. A few years ago, I had to challenge my developers to create a CPU that could be upgraded in situ online because a very large oil company said, we have thousands of your units in plant running, and we are not going to shut down and rip them out and replace them because you created something that's not compatible. So the onus is just as much on the suppliers as it is on the owner-operators, as it is on old guys like me to not just make the point, but to do something about it. So, hidden opportunities. Opportunities to operate better within your process control envelope can save you money. Cost of energy kills all of us. I really can think that compliance gives you an F of X benefit of both greater accuracy and greater repeatability. My small little attempt to be scientific and throw an equation of a sort in there. I'm a geek, I can't help it. You get improvements in product quality if you run more reliably and repeatably. I was always taught the most dangerous state of a process, either a refinery, a chem plant, or whatever, is starting up or shutting down. It's the swing states. It's not when everything's at perfect production. Your safety anomalies create those swing states of not perfect. And if you're not prepared to deal with them and you haven't set yourself up to handle the problems that could occur, those profits won't be there. You won't be safer. Your quality will suffer. So why aren't we looking at it further? Manufacturers either haven't had the time or the energy or the budget. But these are a number of the unmet needs. You've got some lifecycle management tools. You've got an impediment that nobody wants to store and archive things in a way that's always compatible with their historian or their maintenance management system. There's context here. It's not just about chunking data into a corner. You've got to be able to go back and play it back and understand it in order to apply some reliability-centered maintenance and asset performance maintenance principles. Some do offer these things, many don't. It's also a challenge because, and this is a personal for me, and if anyone from OSI or Aspen's in the room, you're going to get offended, but that's tough. For years, people would say, my DCS is going to feed the historian tag-based data. Well, gee, then we turn around and we made instruments smarter. Now one instrument could have 300 tags of information. Most of the integrations that I've seen, and I know that there have been some efforts by all the historian manufacturers to change this, have been tag-based pipes rather than an object-based pipe. Tell me what the cat cracker's doing. And if it brings me 400 parameters and a bunch of variables, whoopee, I don't have to go get them individually. And I've got better bandwidth for my OSI Pi app or my Aspen PIMS apps and things. Come on, that ought to be a no-brainer for folk. if you're a software developer, or you code and you still code. I've been in a lot of facilities over the last number of years where they use analytic applications, and the complaint from the guys who are carrying the tools and the guys who are punching the HMI screens in the control rooms is that, well, yeah, it's nice analysis, but it's not real time at what I do, so I can't make a decision on it. Safety is a closed loop, folks. Accept that and start to believe it and respond to that. It's a bigger loop than all of the loops that your DCS is handling because it's the ones you're counting on the most. I realize I created a bit of Latin here by accident, my fault. Where are high-speed secure integrations? Where are they? How come they're not more prevalent and standard? Why didn't people address it before? Well, there's a bias. DCS is the only control system. Safety is just a thing that sits there and does nothing most of the time. A lot of it is a misperception of the function of safety systems in terms of process control and process safety. And in many cases, suppliers had a tool they loved. Hey, I like several of the SIL calculation, SIL assignment, HAZOP assisting tools, but I can't take a hammer and apply it to wire in a circuit board. You know, just because you got a tool you love doesn't mean it's the right one to give you a full process safety management approach. So you see these vertical slices that are out there where somebody started out with a core competency, let's say in work procedures, or a core competency in doing a hazard analysis, and they tried to staple an HMI on it. All right, so they've got one strength and they're trying to grow it into a full solution. Most of your large producers, manufacturers are rather risk averse. So they can come in and talk all they want about their little slice, their little approach, and they do a pilot job, and it goes reasonably okay. And 18 months later, the CEO of this John Q software company for process safety management fires everyone beneath them because they've only gotten 2 orders in 3 years. Or there's not been the give me a real quick payback from anyone who's sallied into the business. But I'll reiterate, it's not because the profit isn't there. It's because they didn't have a full solution set to go after it. They're a start, but they're not a platform. And I spoke with someone wise beyond their years last night who seemed to have a much better perspective for me. And it was about safety being a continuum and enabling operators to use tools to make their life easier. If you're going to give them a mobile computing device, make it easy to use. Class 1, Div 2, make it something that big fat fingers can touch. But they shouldn't have to worry about storing the data. They shouldn't have to worry about what happens next, other than they executed the test properly, they logged as found, they logged the test results, they logged as commissioned. And they also let you know if 2 or 3 of your layers of protection were defeated. Those are important. But you can't take just a piece of operator round software and say, all right, we'll call a proof test an operator round and we'll change the labels. No. You also can't go after it with just a mobile offering, but no data integrations. A full solution set is required to attack a problem like process safety management. And you can't get there if you don't have good culture for safety lifecycle management. Now, who's out there? I thought I'd name names, and I'm not going to run any of them down. I'm just going to tell you, there's a few people out in the business, there's a few people in this room from these companies, and there are a few others I did not name on purpose just because, due to their niche nature, they haven't had a chance to market the way they could have. There are a couple unknown, less well-known giants out there, let's say, who've made a great deal of credible progress by making work procedures something that works perfectly. But if you didn't write it down and you can't share it with the other systems in your plant, you're hamstringing yourself. So I've got a couple more slides. Just want to take you through those. So we asked people specifically, do you use safety lifecycle management software? And what we got was, well, there's not that much out there. We have some internal methods. Some of the larger producers can substantiate that because they don't just do that, but they've collected 20 years of instrument reliability data to go with their worker behaviors and their proof test data. So if you're a supplier, take a different whack at this. You're not going to win trying to do the traditional account manager, go pound on every door, talk to everyone from level 2 all the way to level 4, because you're selling to multiple groups of individuals, 2 different types of IT, and quite often 3 different maintenance operating disciplines at the same time. And you better understand what you're doing to articulate value. As a supplier, if you can't articulate why whatever your magic software does has value, go back to the drawing board or work on your marketing, because it's about value today. I'm fascinated by software, but I'm also aggravated when my software crashes my networks at home, or when my software, when I hack it and discover it's got vulnerabilities. So your goals should be about reliability, profitability, and safety. Reliability and safety, Paula, you're right, are hand in glove. Safety and security are hand in glove. So if you want to be as good as you can be, this will put you in a good stead for Ocean 1910. Now, nobody's come screaming back and said, hey, we all have to have religion about this yet. But it's coming. They've defined a full set of process safety indicators, both leading and lagging, and they highly recommend people start to look at safety from both a barrier model perspective and the traditional SIS analysis methods that we already use. Work with the supplier, because you have to architect a future together. And with that, I'd like to say thank you, and I hope this has been valuable to you.